What would you do if one day you woke up and realized everything you've ever chased, success, status, validation, never truly made you happy? Would you keep running? Or would you stop, turn inward, and ask yourself the one question that changes everything? Who am I without all of it? Inspired by Denzel Washington's wisdom, sometimes the only way to find yourself again is to let go of the very things you once believed you couldn't live without. Don't take your eyes off this video, because just a few minutes from now, you might look at your entire life through a completely different lens. Have you ever felt like there's an invisible voice whispering in your ear all day long? A vague, blurry sound repeating questions like, what if things don't go as planned? What if I fail? What if people judge me? That voice doesn't come from anyone else. It's your own mind, trapped in a maze of anxiety. And you know what's strange? Even though it only exists in your head, it can still keep you awake at night. It makes your heart race. It holds you back, as if you're living in a world filled with threats, even when nothing around you is actually dangerous. Many people used to believe that anxiety was natural, just the body's way of preparing for uncertainty. Anxiety is a misuse of imagination, a way we use our creative power to imagine nightmares. We think we're reacting to reality, but in truth, we're reacting to a hypothetical future, something that hasn't happened, and maybe never will. It reminded me of a scene from Doctor Strange, where the main character has to let go of his controlling ego to enter a dimension he can't grasp with logic. His mentor tells him, not everything does need to be understood. Some things just need to be felt and believed. Anxiety comes from our inability to control every variable in life. And instead of accepting that truth, we fight it. We lose our peace. But there's a simple truth. Anxiety is just a mask fear wears. It's not the truth. When you stop, stand still, and face it head on, it begins to dissolve like fog under morning sunlight. This journey isn't easy. Our minds are wired to create worst-case scenarios. But if you're willing to walk with me through this video, we'll peel back that illusion, one layer at a time. Nothing can promise your anxiety will disappear entirely, but can offer you a different perspective. One that helps you stop letting it rule your life. One that helps you remember the peace that's always been within you. You just forgot how to reach it. We'll start exactly where anxiety begins, in the mind. And step by step, we'll begin to untangle it, like undoing the knots in an invisible thread that's been tying down your wings. And then you must realize something that you had never truly faced before. Anxiety has never helped me. If anything, it's like a fake friend pretending to care, but actually draining me, clouding my thoughts, and leaving me more exhausted by the day. Many of us still believe, if I worry in advance, I won't be caught off guard. That anxiety helps us prepare for the future. But the truth is, the more we worry, the deeper we sink into the trap we built in our own minds. Have you noticed? When we're anxious, we think we're in control, but in reality, we're being controlled. The mind starts spinning stories, most of which never happen, and we're dragged along like a small boat being pulled into a whirlpool in the middle of an endless ocean. That's the illusion of control. It's like Aang in Avatar, the last airbender, who once believed he had to carry everything alone, control every force around him. But only when he learned to let go did he find his true strength. When you're anxious, you don't act, you overthink. You don't solve problems, you replay your fears. Your mind stops being a guide and becomes a loudspeaker for doubt. And in doing so, you lose the present moment. The only place where life actually happens. The only place where you have the power to change anything. People used to spend hours thinking about things that hadn't even happened. What if I fail? What if I lose this opportunity? What if people misunderstand me? But the more they thought, the more exhausted they became. Anxiety drained my focus, my creativity, even the simple joys of an ordinary day. Just like joy in Inside Out, who, when trapped in sadness, couldn't see the beauty around her. Only when she stopped forcing herself to always be happy did she realize that sometimes what we really need is stillness and a heart open to whatever comes. So, what's the first step to breaking free from this prison? Accepting that anxiety doesn't protect you. It's not a shield, it's a rope holding your feet down. And once you see that, you start learning how to pause, how to return to the present, and face life with clarity instead of chaos. Here's the beautiful part. The moment you let go of just one layer of fear, it's like a light switches on inside your mind. And finally, real solutions have room to appear. Some days, it feels like I'm living between two worlds. One, the real world where things are actually happening. The other, a world inside my head, full of vague scenarios, nameless fears, and endless what-ifs playing on repeat. In those moments, anxiety is like a quiet shadow following every step, whispering doubts, making you second-guess who you are. But through deep psychological insight, you begin to see what that darkness really was. Darkness doesn't vanish when you ignore it. It disappears when you shine light on it. That's when I discovered the concept of the shadow. Not something foreign, but the parts of ourselves we've spent a lifetime avoiding. Repressed anger, unspoken pain, lingering insecurity. Those buried feelings don't just go away. They morph into anxiety, pressure, or that constant sense of unease we can't quite name. I used to think I was strong because I could suppress those emotions. But in truth, I was just shoving them into the dark, where they only grew stronger, waiting for any trigger to burst through. Just like Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight Rises. He couldn't become the hero until he faced his deepest fear, the trembling, wounded human behind the mask. And there's one more thing I've come to realize. The human mind is a masterful storyteller. It's so convincing that it can make you believe the scenarios it invents are real. Every time I feel anxious, it's like I'm watching a movie I've written, directed, and starred in myself, filled with endless what-ifs and worst-case scenarios that haven't even happened. But the painful truth is, I often believe those imagined fears more than I believe in my own presence in reality. That's why I started practicing something simple, yet incredibly difficult: stepping back. Instead of letting my thoughts sweep me away, I began to simply watch them. Just observe, without judgment, without reaction. And when I managed to do that, something extraordinary happened. Those wild, fearful narratives began to fade, like fog dissolving in the morning sun. I started to see clearly. Anxiety is not the truth. It's just a passing thought, transient like all the others. From that moment on, I stopped fearing the dark, because I understood that within the very place I used to dread was the doorway that led me back to myself. For the longest time, I thought living a steady life meant having a firm grip on every possible scenario, controlling every situation, predicting every twist and turn. But gradually I realized it was that need for control that made me lose my way. In the haze of constant worry, I missed the quiet signs life was gently trying to show me. Sometimes in my obsession with not making a mistake, I forgot to look around and notice that the universe had been whispering to me all along. They call it synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. A phone call just when you're your lowest. An old book falls from a shelf and opens to a page that says exactly what you need to hear. A stranger shows up and speaks the words you've been silently struggling with. These aren't accidents. They're a magical intersection between your inner world and the current of life. A quiet conversation between you and the universe. Unfortunately, anxiety has a way of silencing that conversation. When your mind is clouded with a barrage of what-ifs, there's no room for stillness. You doubt every good thing that comes your way, writing it off as mere luck instead of recognizing it as life gently trying to guide you. I remember a time I was completely lost, professionally, emotionally. Everything felt like it was falling apart. And in that chaos, I happened upon a quote by someone I deeply admire, filmmaker Hayao Miyazaki. He said, "There's always a wind blowing. If you just stand still, it will carry you to where you need to go." That quote didn't fix my problems immediately, but it gave me something far more important: the faith that I wasn't alone and that somehow everything would find its rightful place. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means having the courage to release the obsession with being in control. It means being able to exhale, and tell yourself, I'm strong enough to face whatever comes. It's not just trusting yourself. It's trusting the invisible hand of life, believing that there's a deeper rhythm to it all, one far more intricate than what our eyes can see. Like a piece of music, soft and delicate. You only hear its full beauty when you pause and listen. Life is like that too. When you stop trying to control everything, you start to hear its guidance. And sometimes, just one of those moments is enough to change your entire path. There are times I see myself like an actor on the grand stage of life, skilled, adaptable, but utterly exhausted. I smile when I'm supposed to, say the right things, meet expectations. But when the curtain falls, I feel hollow. That anxiety doesn't stem from inadequacy. It comes from living too long in roles that don't belong to me. Behind that perfectly worn mask is a soul fractured by the pressure to become someone I'm not. The process of returning to one's true self is called individuation, a path that's far from easy, but endlessly worthwhile. It's when you start peeling back the layers, letting go of borrowed beliefs, dropping expectations that were never yours to carry. It's when you stop living to please others and start living to connect with your essence. Most anxiety doesn't come from what's actually happening. It comes from the gap between who we pretend to be and who we truly are. When you live by someone else's standards, every step you take feels shaky. Because deep down, one wrong move could shatter the image you've worked so hard to maintain, an image that never reflected your real self to begin with. I think of that scene in The Greatest Showman, when the main character confesses, I spent a lifetime chasing the spotlight, but I left behind the people who really loved me. That line hit me like a wake-up call. How many of us have chased the glitter of success, attention, validation, only to forget that our inner self has been crying out all along? But when you start living in alignment with your core values, no matter how simple or unglamorous, something miraculous happens. Fear dissolves. You stop worrying about judgment, stop fearing the loss of things that were never truly yours. You become free, not because life suddenly gets easier, but because you stop fighting to be someone you're not. Each of us has a pure, untamed self waiting to be heard. That honest, tender, yet fiercely resilient part of us that knows who we are and what we want. Only when we dare to return to that self do we finally experience true peace. The kind that doesn't come from controlling the external world, but from fully embracing our internal one. And I believe when you have the courage to come home to yourself, life will meet you there in the most beautiful, synchronistic way. From that point on, your journey will no longer be led by fear, but by truth. Sometimes what exhausts us most isn't the chaos outside, but the silent resistance within. That part of us that refuses to accept what's happening. We tell ourselves, if I try a little harder, grip a little tighter, maybe things will stay under control. But reality proves otherwise. The more we resist life's flow, the more we're swept away by its current. I used to be like that. Every time I stood at a new crossroads, instead of listening to my heart, I responded with doubt and fear of the unknown. Change made me uneasy, and to hold on to what I thought was stability, I clung tightly to things that were already asking to be released. The key to freedom is surrender. Not the kind that gives up, but a conscious surrender, a willingness to accept what is rather than fight it as if we could rewrite everything. When I finally understood that, something opened in me. I didn't need to know everything. I just needed enough stillness to listen, enough trust to let go, and enough courage to take the next step, even if I couldn't see the whole road. I remember a scene in Kung Fu Panda where Master Shifu tried to control everything, only to make it all worse. It wasn't until he accepted the moment, surrendered to what is, that he found his peace and led his student to victory. It's like trying to grip a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. But when you release your hold, it settles gently into your palm. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean surrendering or neglecting your life. It means you stop treating life like a battlefield. You become fluid, like water, no longer clinging to rigid forms, but always finding a way forward, whether through cracks in stone or gaps in walls. And in that moment, you begin to feel clarity in your mind, lightness in your heart, and a vast, open space within you where something new can enter. I've learned that sometimes the answer isn't to control, but to release. Not to grip tighter, but to allow. Because only when we let go do, we have two free hands to receive the better things waiting for us ahead. There are days when I wake up feeling a heavy weight I can't quite explain. A vague sense of unease settles into each breath, as if I'm carrying something far too large for me to hold. I used to think that meant I was weak, negative, or just someone with issues. But the deeper I went into the healing journey, the more I realized these feelings weren't just mine alone. Anxiety and insecurity are natural parts of being human. They're not signs of personal failure. They're echoes from a deeper collective consciousness, what Carl Jung once called the collective unconscious. It's a vast ocean of memories, beliefs, and fears passed down through generations, still living quietly inside each of us, even when we're unaware. And when I understood that, something in me softened. It was no longer, why am I the only one who feels this way, but rather a sense of compassion for myself and for humanity. Like realizing you're not alone in the storm, because somewhere millions of others are struggling through the same thunderclouds. And here's the irony. In the midst of that fear, the ego clings even tighter. It tries to take control to restore a sense of safety. The ego despises uncertainty. It hates not knowing what's coming, hates change, hates walking into the unknown without a map. So it builds elaborate plans, scenarios, what-ifs, all to avoid the discomfort of ambiguity, which, ironically, is the very essence of life. But here's the paradox. True growth only happens when we dare to step outside that comfort zone. Think of Frodo in The Lord of the Rings. If he had never left the Shire, the peaceful, familiar land he knew so well, how could his great journey have begun? Just like us, if we keep clinging to what's familiar, how can we ever discover the better version of ourselves waiting on the other side of fear? I've learned to step back and observe my ego, not with resistance, but with understanding. I listen to it, then gently say, thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm strong enough to move forward now. And every time I do that, I take one step further into unfamiliar territory, into a place where I don't need all the answers, only the courage to take the next step. So if today you're feeling lost or anxious, don't rush to blame yourself. You're not alone, and there's nothing wrong with you. It's simply your ego whispering, you're ready to grow now. Have you ever asked yourself, if one day I no longer had this job, no longer received recognition, what would I have left? I asked myself that question once, on an empty afternoon, right after I finished a major project I had poured my heart into. In that quiet moment, after the applause faded and the spotlight dimmed, I felt strangely hollow, as if my entire worth had been tied to the role I was playing, the title, the success story. It's hard not to attach ourselves to roles. The diligent employee, the devoted mother, the respected teacher, the fearless entrepreneur. But the irony is that these labels, these identities, can quietly become our prisons. We fear losing them. We worry that without them, we'll no longer be seen, appreciated, or valued. And so the anxiety clings to us like a persistent shadow. I remember the words of Eckhart Tolle, author of The Power of Now. You are not your role. You are the one who cannot be defined by any label. It sounded abstract at first, but the longer I sat with it, the more I understood. Only when I began peeling away each label, those that society and I myself had stuck onto me, did I start to see my core. The part of me that needs no approval, no applause, no title. Just a whole, living, breathing human being. When we release the identities we thought defined us, it feels like taking off a heavy suit of armor. We no longer fear losing a position because we realize our deepest value isn't in a resume, or in praise, or in anyone's eyes. We are simply a person who is living, learning, and growing, with no need to be called anything else. I think of Simba from The Lion King. When he ran from himself and the responsibility of being king. He believed he was nothing more than a lost lion. But when he remembered his roots, when he heard his father's voice whisper through the wind, "Remember who you are," he finally had the strength to return, not to play a role, but to live as his whole self. So if you're afraid of losing a title or a place you've held, ask yourself, who am I if I'm no longer called by that name? And if the answer brings a long, thoughtful silence, then congratulations. You've just taken your first steps toward freedom. In everyday life, few things weigh heavier on the heart than the quiet fear. Are they judging me? Am I good enough in their eyes? Am I loved, accepted? Those questions, though seemingly innocent, can quietly erode our confidence. They make us shrink. They pull us away from our truth. I spent years living in that shadow, always trying to please everyone, always putting others' perceptions above my own inner knowing. And I was exhausted. So exhausted, I started to feel like I was living someone else's life. Behind those wary glances and the longing for praise lies a silent but fierce fear, the fear of rejection. We're not afraid of people's eyes. We're afraid of what we feel when we think we've been judged, excluded, or deemed unworthy. This worry about what others think is really just a mirror reflecting the parts of us that still ache for healing. So when you find yourself trembling at criticism or hurt by a cold stare, pause and ask, what part of me just got touched? I remember a scene from Good Will Hunting. Will, a genius deeply wounded by trauma, keeps pushing people away. He acts indifferent, but really, he's terrified of being hurt again. And only when his therapist looks him in the eyes and gently repeats, "It's not your fault," does Will finally break down. The armor shatters. He cries, and for the first time, he lets himself feel the pain he's carried for so long. That moment is where real healing begins. Not when we avoid our fear, but when we face it without judgment. And here's the beautiful thing. When healing begins, something miraculous happens. We stop being entangled in the games of validation. We no longer need others to tell us we're okay, worthy, or enough, because we've found those answers inside ourselves. From that moment on, every relationship becomes lighter. We no longer approach others to fill a void, but to share what's already whole. We don't love to be loved back. We love because we are already full. The journey back to your inner truth is rarely easy, but it's the only path that can truly set you free from the invisible chains of expectations. And you deserve a life like that. A life where you can be fully yourself. No roles to play. No permission needed to exist. No matter how many trials you've endured. No matter how many fears you've faced about your place in the world, your relationships, or how others perceive you, there will always be a place to return to. A quiet, sacred space within. Untouched, unshaken by emotional storms. That space is the wisest, calmest part of you, the silent observer. I used to believe I had to completely eliminate anxiety in order to live in peace. But I've come to realize peace doesn't come from silencing your worries. It comes from being able to look directly at them with a calmness, as if watching clouds drift across the sky. You're not the clouds. You're the sky. That's one of the profound truths shared by the Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh. You don't have to run away from your emotions. Just sit with them, breathe deeply, and smile. When you live as the observer, you're no longer swept away by the whirlpool of emotions. You begin to see anxiety for what it is, a small ripple in the vast stream of consciousness. Like a child crying in the dark, afraid of what it can't see. You don't have to chase it away or rush to soothe it. Just be there, steady, present. That alone is enough. And from that presence comes liberation. Of course, this isn't something you master overnight. Just like muscles need daily training to grow stronger, your ability to return to the present, to stillness, must be nurtured with every breath, every pause you take amidst the chaos of life. There will be days when anxiety returns, loud and overwhelming. But if you can pause just for a moment, breathe in, breathe out, and remind yourself, I am still here. I'm still safe. Then you're already reclaiming your power, one breath at a time. I once saw this truth portrayed so vividly in the character of Pi from Life of Pi. stranded in the vastness of the ocean, trapped on a lifeboat with a wild tiger. He didn't try to control or destroy his fear. He learned to live with it, to observe it, and from that space of coexistence, he discovered a strange, resilient will to survive. Over time, as mindfulness becomes your practice, not to achieve anything, but simply to return, you'll witness something miraculous. Peace is no longer some distant destination. It becomes the very fabric of your daily life. Your mind grows clearer. You stop being pulled in every direction by fleeting emotions. And you begin to live, not in regret over the past or fear of the future, but with quiet confidence in the fullness of the present moment. Thank you for staying with us all the way to the end of this video. If you're carrying unnamed worries, if you're questioning your self-worth, or just feeling lost in a life that moves too fast, I hope what we shared today becomes a small anchor, just enough to help you pause, breathe deeply, and see the world a little differently. And the most beautiful part, you don't have to be perfect. You only have to be real with yourself. Life isn't asking you to have all the answers. It's simply inviting you to be brave enough to ask the questions. If something in today's story spoke to you, leave a comment below. Tell us your story, your struggles, the lessons you've learned, even the wounds you've never dared to name. Because we are here, we're listening, and we're walking this path with you. And if there's a burden you've been carrying silently, don't hesitate to share. Who knows, maybe the next video we create will be a gift made just for you. If today's message meant something to you, please like and share this video. Help us spread this energy to those who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories and gentle wisdom, told with nothing less than love. Thank you, truly, for being here. We'll meet again